I visited the GIN conference in Manila, and the GIN stands for the Global Issues Network, and it's where lots of international students come together and share their experiences on tackling global issues. And after the conference, I was fortunate enough to be invited by Rustic Pathways, and they gave me a scholarship to Cambodia. Woo! Okay, out of a lot of programs they had in Cambodia, I specifically choose the floating village service because that was the one that interested me the most, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. So when you think of Cambodia, you might think that it's a pretty small country, but it's not. It's actually pretty big. And it is right next door to Cambodia, and for the 10 years I've been in Thailand, I've never been to Cambodia. Yes, next to Thailand, sorry. I've never been to Cambodia, so like it was a completely new experience for me. So what did I do on the floating village service? So as by the name, you can see that it's about floating villages. In Cambodia, there's lots of rivers, and there's the really big Tonle Sap River, which is the largest lake in Southeast Asia. So there's lots of floating villages built on top of the lake. And we visited the floating villages and did lots of community service, and we learned about the Cambodian culture and met some new people, and I made lots of new friends. So the first day we flew into Cambodia, we arrived in Phnom Penh. And we stayed there for a night, and the second day we learned about the Cambodian culture. And some of you might have remember from year 8 humanities that the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia and did a lot of bad things. So we visited the Security 21 S21 office, which is a prison where they like kept everyone, and then the killing fields is where they basically killed everyone. Here is a picture of a prison cell that we visited. Can anyone guess what these boxes are for?
Claymores.
Sorry?
Mines.
No.
Ammunition.
These are the bathrooms. Those are the bathrooms. So they would do their business in a really small box. They weren't allowed out of the room, and they only had one window, and it was really hot in there. So this relates to the freedom and the human rights of people. And next, I want to show you this picture. Can someone read what it says on the sign? So a lot of people, as I said before, were killed at the killing fields. It was about a third of the population, to be exact. So the prisoners would kneel next to a really mass grave, and then they would beat them on the head, and then they would just fall in, and then they would pour chemicals over them to kill them and to like minimize the smell that is the rotting bodies from. So because there were lots of children, the executioners would also just take the children from their mothers and beat them on a tree and throw them in the grave. Yes, it is quite cruel. And so I just want you to think about that for a minute, and what you can do to help these children, even though this was in the past. So after we went to Phnom Penh, we drove all the way to Padang, which is up there. And it was a 6-hour ride, and this little city is next to the river, which we cruised on. As you can see, there's 2 villages that we visited. At both villages, we were lucky enough to have a chance to meet the children and teach them some English. So before I go on, I want to talk to you about our life on the boat. As the program says, it's the floating village service. So basically, we just floated down the river and visited villages. And this was our boat that we floated on. And we would do everything in this. We would sleep in it, we would eat, we would like take a bath on top of the roof, and it was really a fun experience. Gin is based on the 20 Argos global issues, which is written in the book. And I just want to talk to you about the 20 different issues that the world is facing right now. They're divided into 3 groups. The first group is sharing our planet and issues involving the global commons. The second group is sharing our humanity issues requiring a global commitment. And the third group is sharing our root book issues needing a global regulatory approach. So the first issue that I noticed when we went to Cambodia was the issue of education for all. As I said before, we were able to teach these children in the local schools they had. Their school looked nothing like ours. They did not have aircon. They only had one blackboard in front, and then the desks were half broken, some of them. And they had like holes everywhere in their floor. So like if you don't watch out where you're walking, you might just fall into the river. And there also, we tried to teach them English, as you can see on the board. The thing that shocked me was that when we walked in to a classroom and said hello to all the children, they just stared at me and like they thought I was like some alien coming from another planet, like speaking a completely foreign language that they did not know. You should assume that these children would know how to say hello to each other in English, because that's like the most common word that in the English language. But they did not know that. So the education they have is really minimal and will have an impact on their life later on. And that's me playing with the children. The second issue was the water defects and health issue that I noticed. So this is a picture of life on the river, and this is the river itself. As you can see, the water is really muddy and dirty, and I don't think anyone right now would want to drink this water, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we had a break in the school, I saw a kid just like lie flat next to the river and started gulping water down because he did not have a clean drinking water source. So he was drinking from the river, which we bathed like all our bathing water in it, and all the soap and shampoo and all the So you can imagine how bad the quality of life is there in the rural side. And in the villages, we did not see any hospitals, so they had to like visit the big city for healthcare. And when we did a survey, like maybe one kid out of the 50 students at the school have visited a big city, even though it's like only a 10-minute boat ride to CMB. And some bigger villages are fortunate enough to get sponsored by a foreign government. Like one of these villages we visited, it's this water purify system was donated and funded by the government of Finland and with the government of Cambodia. So governments around the world are supporting these rural villages in Cambodia. Lastly, I want to talk about the digital divide that happens. When we went there, I noticed a lot of really high cell phone towers, but like none of the villages actually had a mobile phone for them to use. They did not also have electricity, so at night they would just turn on this generator for like an hour or so and try to watch some TV on their black and white TV, which sometimes are purple. And life was really hard for them. So they had to adapt. So they would wake up when the sun rises, which is like 4 in the morning every day, and you can hear the fishermen just driving their motorboats on the river very early in the morning, and they would sleep at around 7 when the sun sets. So they do not really need electricity. So they have adapted to the living style. Lastly, I want to talk about the community and service that we did on the trip. As I said before, we taught some children English, and we also we painted a temple or school. I want to talk about painting the temple. So we just took like 2 hours out of our schedule that we had, and we visited the temple, and we decided to help the monk paint the walls of the temple. The temple has been under construction for like more than 2 years, and the monk never got time or like the funds to complete the temple. So we just came in and like painted it and then zooped out, and it didn't really make a big difference to us. But to the monk, he was really happy. Like, he was really happy that someone would help them do such a thing. So one thing that you should take away from this presentation is that a little thing that you do, like sorry, let me put that in other words. One little thing that you do, even though it doesn't seem to be a lot, but it might seem a lot to other people in need. So I think if you look at community service that way, you would continue to do good things in